Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer, and welcome to the Virtual CISO Moment. Mike Gropp joins us today. He is a senior offensive security consultant at Solisec. He is also a cybersecurity instructor with Applied Technology Academy. He is also an authorized offensive security instructor and a Black Hat USA trainer. Earlier in his career, he co-founded global companies, served as a chief compliance officer, and spent over a decade working in China. These have been experiences that have clearly strongly influenced his pragmatic, business-aligned approach to security today. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg. It's great to finally be here. I've read your book and I was like, I need to talk to Greg, and then here we are.
Well, and as we were saying before we started recording, you not only read, but you also helped as one of the beta readers, which I very much appreciated. You called out a few things that was able to correct that made it a stronger product. So I very much appreciate your help with that. And one of the things I love about doing this series, the Virtual CISO Moment, is that I get to hear and learn more about folks that maybe you wouldn't learn from LinkedIn or just from like casual discussions or something like that. And in the process of prepping for this, I have come to learn that you have quite an interesting journey from to how you got to get into cybersecurity and where you're at today. So why don't you take us through that from the beginning, and you might even talk about 100 miles in there at some point in time.
Oh, wow.
Or 162 miles, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends how deep you want to go with this. So I'll just start talking. If I get a little too detailed or off the rails, then feel free to, tractor beam me back in, beam me up. I was born at a young age, like many of you. No, just kidding. I won't go that far back. But no,
I once started for English class. I'm sorry, see, now I'm going off track. Ninth grade English class, where they told you have to start general and get specific. And I started by saying, when the earth was formed 4 billion years ago. She's like, no, that's a little bit too general. Anyway, go ahead.
Early. Yeah. So I won't go too far back, but yeah, I lived in China for 10 years and started 2 companies while I lived there. The first company was a Bitcoin exchange in 2014. I was really passionate about cryptocurrencies since 2010, 2011. Please don't ask me how much I bought and held. Not enough. I will say that the smartest guy I know, my brother-in-law, he worked at SpaceX for 9 years. He now works in Fusion in Boston, in the Boston area. And I asked him, and I said, Morgan, I have $200. I could buy 800 of these Bitcoins. Do you think I should do it? And he's like, no, it seems like a scam. So we'll put that aside, but always passionate about the potential for cryptocurrencies and what they can do for the economy, and especially the unbanked of the world and those in countries where it's really hard for them to have a currency that's stable and for them to save money. And so that's kind of an aside, but I could tell since 2012 when Xi Jinping came to power in China that they weren't going to allow, they blocked Google, Facebook, and then even before him, they blocked Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all pretty much anything they can't control, they block. And so I thought, okay, having a cryptocurrency exchange in Beijing, maybe not the best place to continue doing that. A whole other long story short, my wife and I, she's Canadian, I'm American. We met online on a website called christianmingle.com. We met online and fell in love, and she moved to China. We got married and started a company all in 2015. So in one calendar year, it was meet, date, engage, married, start the company. So 2015 was the year of the whirlwind for sure.
Wow.
And the company we started was corporate training. So I lived in China at that point for 5 years. I speak Chinese. I read, write, speak it fluently. She'd lived around the world in a number of countries. I think 7 different countries, visited 40 countries. She speaks English, Spanish, French, Portuguese. So we had this communication and international cross-cultural kind of background. And we're working in this international environment. We saw there was a huge need for communication. And funny enough, today I'm in cybersecurity and there's a huge need for communication. So we started a communication training firm in 2015 called Lead with Words. And we built that up and started working with, Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagen and Airbus, Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine, and other companies. And a lot of what we did actually was working with really technical people, helping them communicate to non-technical audiences and executives. And so we'd be working with research and development engineers at Mercedes-Benz, helping them communicate with their executives or with the design team, or working with Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine scientists and statisticians, and they're trying to communicate with their supply chain or logistic people or with their executives. And So that's kind of the background there. As we were building up Lead with Words from 2015 to 2020 in China, I started using software to solve business problems, because you run into these business problems. Sometimes they're very simple or seemingly simple. Other times they're more complex. So for example, we had a contract that had 13 parts in English and 13 parts in Chinese, because it's bilingual, right? You have both sections. Only the Chinese is legally binding though, so you have to get that right. But prone to human error. And so I started getting into Python, and my first project was a script. So we'd send the client an Excel file. They'd fill it out with all the details. What's the contract amount, training location, all those details, banking details. They would send it back. I'd review it. And then I'd just feed it through the script, and it would give us a perfect contract. And then from there, I'm like, well, this is fascinating. I'm going to keep leveraging software to build business value. And so my next big project was a full featured CRM, right? So I want to manage all of our clients and projects and workflows and calendars and to-dos. And so because I had Python as my background, I'm like, well, Django would be the next logical step. It's a web framework for building, full stack apps. And so I built this, ugly, but workable full stack app using that. And then as you build, you start to realize we have to secure these things, right? I kind of went through all the motions I think the vibe coders of today will go through of, I was doing it the hard way. I would go to Stack Overflow or Reddit, depending how much abuse I was willing to suffer, and get my answers there, and then copy and paste it in and see if it worked. And if it didn't, I would look up the documentation, and that whole cycle of just getting it till it works. But my goal was just to get it to work, not for it to be secure. Now, thankfully, I didn't have major security incidents, but I just started to realize we have to secure these things. And so it was kind of like this flashpoint was 2020, right? COVID hit. We were in China, and we had this decision to make, because all of our clients for 2020, it was going to be our biggest year yet. Our clients shut down all training, all face-to-face training. We had some big events and clients lined up. And so we said, well, what are we going to do? So we said, okay, we've seen this before, right? In our mind, we went back 5 or I would it be no longer than that. We went back 10, 15 years, and we thought, okay, SARS, swine flu, this will be a regional epidemic. It'll blow over in 7 months, this whole COVID thing. So let's say we said, okay, we'll each take a suitcase, go to LA to see my family, go to Waterloo, which is an hour south of Toronto, to see Michelle's family, and we'll do business development. And then we'll just come back in 3 months, maybe 7 months if it's really bad. And the rest of the story from the global perspective is that it spread globally. It followed us. We were actually skiing in Quebec for on a 2-day trip. And our first day, the mountain was open. The second day it was closed. So it was like right then, it just in the middle of that trip is when they're like, okay, this COVID thing spread globally. So we couldn't get back into China. So for 7 months of just really intense uncertainty, we're like, are we going back? Do we keep paying for our apartment? We only most of our stuff was back in China. We had good friends. We had a great church we were a part of. That was our community. That was our place of business. And so it was a big struggle for us. And after this intense uncertainty, we decided, okay, we're gonna move to Canada. And so we had our friends, and my wife, bless her, she's amazing, over the phone, over Zoom, I guess, remotely move out of our apartment. And so they just went through our apartment and marked everything that she told them to mark of, sell this, give this away. And so our friends helped us move out remotely. And so that was a big time of
you moved out remotely.
Yes, remotely. So they had our apartment was actually a converted hotel, and so we had a code on the door. So we just told the code to our friends. And then in China, they have this app called WeChat, which is like a super app. It's like it's a chat app, but it has lots of other functionality, and one of those is payment. And so they just received payment on their phone. You just scan the QR code. They would send money to our friends, and then our friends were like, "All right, we sold your bike, we sold your motor scooter, we sold this and that."
And, I gotta ask, just interrupt there for a second and ask, kind of like a human interest question. So you left your apartment in China, and you weren't able to go back. But when you left the apartment, you didn't know that you weren't coming back.
Correct.
I mean, did you have laundry that still needed to be done? Did you have dirty dishes in the sink? Did somebody forget to flush the toilet? I mean, I'm just wondering. It's just how was the apartment? How, that we were freaking me out a little.
No, it's not like we were fleeing Egypt here. So no, it's not like we were just sprinting away in the middle of the night or something. It was okay. We're gonna leave. We're leaving for a few months. So laundry was.
So it was buttoned down fine. Everything was all
absolutely.
Okay.
It was more like it was 90% of our belongings were. I would not even that. 95% of our belongings were still back there. And then of that, we probably sold about 95% / gave away. And it was keep the wedding album, keep these other things. And We kind of we did the whole minimalist purge without being minimalist purge people.
Well, I was just curious. I just had the vision of like, there was still food on the table, or you're only going to be gone for a couple of weeks. So, you left a whole bunch of food for the cat, and the cat died like 4 months or later, something like that.
Oh,
So
that would have been
I'm,
terrible. No
no,
animals there. No.
I'm glad
Yeah.
that worked out well. I didn't mean to
Yeah.
interrupt the stories. Go ahead.
No, so we're actually getting right to the cybersecurity pivot. And so I'd always been interested in computers since I was a kid. And I was always cooking up something or trying to break something, or usually just trying to get something to work. Like, I have to install this driver, so I have to learn about drivers. And I can't, it won't let me do it. So I have to learn about permissions. And and then while building our company, I was the default IT guy. So I have to learn about, what's a virtual machine and what's Linux and how do I get a web app going and what's Nginx and what's a reverse proxy. And you learn as you go, but it's really just like not systematic, right? You're just walking through the dark, and whatever you bump into, you have to get around or fix or whatever it is. And so, so the pivot came at that point where I'm like, I'm really interested in cybersecurity, had been for years. So I did some SANS certifications. There was this great program in Canada through what's called the Catalyst. They offered cybersecurity training. They partnered with SANS. So I did a few certifications with SANS. And then I found out that my passion was actually offensive security. So I went and did the OSCP and did the OSEP. And then ATA, which is one of the partners of OffSec, that does the instructor-led training for OffSec, reached out and said, would you like to teach the Pen 200, which is for the OSCP? I said, yes, this would be great. I have a great training background, and I love offensive security. And so I also started doing some work as well, like part-time, just projects here and there, and just really grew as a passion. And so interestingly enough, I got a job at the Catalyst where I cut my teeth with training and started doing more training there. And I thought, all this training is good, but I want to be more hands-on. So now I'm in a role where I am fully hands-on penetration testing, red teaming. Like that's my focus. And that's how I got to where I am now. It was this just growing interest in technology, which turned into software development, which realized, wow, we have to secure this. And then COVID was this pivot point where my wife still runs the business, and we actually pivoted into e-learning. We took a year, 2021, to film, edit, and post-production, all that stuff. It took about a year to create a 10-hour e-learning. It's 5 hours of film, video, and 5 hours of practice. And so that's our signature Present to Influence program. Our 2-day in-person program we had is now an e-learning, which is great. So we've worked with, for example, Johnson & Johnson. We've worked across 10 or 11 countries in Asia Pacific. It's a very cost-effective way to do training when you have people all around the world, right? Global teams. And so she's running that, and I'm focused on cybersecurity. And that's the short story.
So just a quick business question before jumping into more of the security stuff, because you said a couple of things in there I wanted to touch on. But you said that you founded the business in China, right? But
Yes.
now it's headquartered in the United States.
In Canada.
I'm sorry, in Canada.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My question is, did you find, because you're in Canada right now, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why I thought you were US. I apologize.
I'm originally from the US. I was born and raised in Southern California. I went to school in Texas at Baylor University, but then I was China and now Canada.
And where are you at in Canada?
In Waterloo. It's an hour south of Toronto.
Okay. Waterloo. Okay. Is that anywhere near Buffalo? Niagara Falls?
Yeah, just it's I mean, it's not near as relative, but Buffalo would be right across the border. Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, I went to school at the University of Buffalo, and because of the disparages and drinking ages, would do some of the alcohol imbibing across the border in Canada. So anyway, I digress. So my question was, did you find it easier or harder to form the business in Canada versus China?
So funny enough,
or to register.
Yeah. Oh, to register?
You go ahead.
So yeah, there's actually two ways of looking at this. One is if you're doing business, and then the other is actually registration. Registration was very straightforward. It depends where it's kind of regional. So we register our business in Shenzhen, which is southern part of China. And it just seems to be typically the further you get away from Beijing, the less regulations there are and the more incentives.
Okay.
Also, China has been strategically trying to build up Shenzhen as kind of a counterweight to the more previously democratic Hong Kong. And so how do I say this? They want Hong Kong's power and wealth to decrease. Now they control it a lot more than they used to, but that's kind of been a long-term strategy of the Chinese, has been to try and attract capital, human capital, and financial capital to the mainland. and for Hong Kong to become less important. And part of that was just building out Shenzhen. So Shenzhen had some great, I guess you could say, deals, regulatory deals on setting up a business where like you don't have to have an office, and it's very fast. And I found it very efficient, very fast. We have an agent we still work with, and so they handle a lot of that stuff for us. We still have our business set up there. Setup here wasn't too bad. We went with a lawyer. It was, I would say, yeah, it wasn't too bad. I guess I would put them like similar in terms of difficulty, but the big difference actually is we miss doing business in China. The relationship part of doing business in China is such a pivotal thing. And here's an interesting insight, that not cybersecurity related, but just I guess a cross-cultural insight. In China, if I'm building a product and it requires a widget, and I go to my boss at the plant and say, hey, my brother has a widget factory and makes widgets, they'll say, that's great. It's your brother. That means he's your family. If I need to, go get my pound of flesh, or I need to talk, hold someone to the fire to get things done, you're his brother. I can get that done. Or you trust him. So I'll trust him. This is a good thing. In the West, if you say that, ooh, conflict of interest.
Yeah, it's the exact, nepotism and all that.
Yeah.
That's why I figured you were going with that, which is unfortunate because you've immediately shut down. I guess both extremes are unfortunate, because you don't want to shut down what the right choice is either way. Although I kind of lean more towards the China way of thinking. I mean, that sort of makes more sense. It's just like you've already, if you are a good employee and what you do there is good, or if you're a good business or what have you, chances are those who you might recommend would be good as well too, or who are connected to you, because usually, birds of a feather, that sort of thing. And so you've already got that sort of internal vetting there, which you don't have when you have you're immediately struck. It's like, oh, they're related to you, they're sixth cousin, or 6 degrees of separation, Kevin Bacon type thing. It's just like, oh, that's still too little. It's like you can't work. So no, the reason why I asked that is because I know that I'm guilty of this in the West, like thinking it's just like, well, how we do things is the right way, and everybody else is playing catch up, and that's just the wrong way to think. And so I've always tried, and even more so, more intentionally, to whenever given the opportunity to take advantage of those instances where I can learn a little bit more about different areas and how things are done. Because again, I learned this as a supervisor a long time ago, that my way often, while it might have worked, it might not be the best way. And often my subordinates, they might do things that are different than the way I do it, but they actually teach me something. So I appreciate you letting me know that.
Yeah. So you like, there's trade-offs to it though, right? Is there more corruption in China? Absolutely. Is there nepotism that in China? Absolutely. Like, there's problems with it because things get corrupted and taken to their extremes. But
sure,
if you can vet the product or service and you have that relationship, I think it is a great way to do business. But so I kind of see both sides of the coin and understand like why things are in place in the West for anti-corruption.
Yeah, it's human nature. Corruption is going to be everywhere, but not here on the Virtual CISO Moment. We are corruption free. You're right. So you mentioned about your jump into coding, and I love the fact that you jumped into it because you were trying to solve a problem. You're trying to solve a business problem, and often I found that is the way that the best applications are created, and also the best learning. And I'm speaking from experience because you specifically brought up vibe coding. Yeah. And I've jumped into that using Bubble as a platform because with my virtual CISO business, I realized that there are things that I can do a lot more efficiently if I could build an app. Now, I never had the patience to go down the path of learning the tools to build a full stack app and all that. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of pre-work. I know that I'm preaching to the choir here. And I have a business to run. I don't have time. I wish I did, but I didn't have time to do that. And that's not to say that vibe coding is easy. It isn't. You don't have to learn the lines, but really, when you're building an application, you don't have to learn the coding, rather, is what I meant. But when you're building an application, it's more about what is the application doing? How are processes relating to each other, information relating to each other? How do you want to present it and all that? And so what vibe coding has done for me is it has eliminated the speed bumps in trying to learn the intricacies of coding and allowed me to just start creating, which I think is great. But and this is where I'm getting, I know I'm on a lengthy thing here, but to your point, I've mentioned this in the podcast a couple of times. I have fallen into the trap a couple of times where I've inadvertently created a security vulnerability. Like for
Mhm.
example, I was using this tool in relation to it called Zapier.
Yeah.
Zaps are, you're probably familiar with Zapier.
Mhm.
And it's great. Within Zapier, you can tell its AI to do a certain workflow, which I did, which is involving like transferring some sort of information to the Bubble app that I'm building. And I'm troubleshooting it just to make sure everything's working fine. It looked like it did. Long story short, I saw that it was dumping the information into an S3 bucket, unprotected. I mean, it's a long URL, but it's unprotected.
Yeah.
And that bothered me because I'm like, I assumed that everything I did was secure. I asked the AI, I said, well, this doesn't seem secure. And the AI said, well, if you want it secure, yeah, we can do this. And I'm like, okay, wait, we're going to stop here for a second because I've lost my trust in you. So, but
Yeah.
that's me. I had the mindset to look at something from a security standpoint. I am really, really, really scared that there's a lot more business owners like me who don't, for
Mhm.
whatever reason, have the time or the ability or the desire to learn coding. Not that that would eliminate any security issues anyway, but they jump straight into this vibe coding stuff, not realizing they're opening up issues. How big of
Yeah.
an issue do you think this might be?
I think I think it becomes a major issue. So you're a unique case because you were in cybersecurity. But if we just take a
Mhm.
business owner who isn't in cybersecurity, the challenge is that they're end users of software. So they're looking for functionality, not for security. Does it work? Does it do the thing I want it to do? Does it download the data? Does it parse it? Does it give me the result I want? Does it send the money to the client? Whatever the thing is they want it to do, does it do that? They're not asking what could it do? What could happen to it? How could it be misused? How might this leak data? And so it's just that they don't have that same security mindset. So I do think this will become an issue. Back to what you said about the S3 bucket, even with AWS, this whole concept of secure by default is becoming more and more popular, thankfully. And it used to be, I forget if it was it April of 22 or April of 21, not too long ago, S3 buckets were default public.
Yes.
Now they're default private, and they've made that switch, which is good. And even that was AWS, like this massive, one of the top, one of the big three cloud companies, and just a few years ago, for their primary, S3 buckets, like, are the primary storage function in the AWS ecosystem. And so I think if AWS themselves is even playing catch up in a sense, or still getting things right, trying to at a fundamental level, even just in the last few years, like what hope is there for us small business owners?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think that this was an AWS problem. I think this was a
Mm.
Zapier problem. I think AWS did exactly what Zapier said
Yeah,
for it
yeah,
to
yeah.
do.
I
You
know.
know,
Yeah, no, I think what must have happened is Zapier must have made it public. I think AWS
yeah.
would have had a default. I was just because you raised that up, I was raising that idea of like even AWS themselves made that change in the last few years. And so, um, so for small business owners, like it's a big challenge. One thing that's quite interesting with as well as with vibe coding, I think it's wonderful because you're being more of an architect and less of a bricklayer, right? You're saying like, here's the beautiful thing I want to build and how it's going to work. You lay all the bricks for me. I don't have time to do that laborious process, and I'll come by and make sure it looks good. But one of the challenges I find, particularly in consulting, is speed of execution is great, but then you have to actually slow down to learn, because you can get it's you've probably seen this meme before. It's it doesn't work, I don't know why. And then the next picture, it works, I don't know why. And that's like a classic, even pre-vibe coding. That was like a classic thing of, oh, I changed this, but I'm not exactly sure how it's working because it's so complex. I think it'll be really important, especially in the area of vibe coding in the future, for people to slow down and take time to learn what happened. And so even coming up with like a master prompt of, summarize all the steps you took, define the problem very succinctly, and put it into a 5-minute bite-sized lesson to teach me what you just did so I understand it, right? And then use that after these points where you're like, oh, it wasn't talking with the database for some reason, now it is. What happened? And I don't really know why. It just changed the code and I didn't see that. And then it'll tell you like, oh, you were accessing the wrong port, or the syntax is wrong. You had it like this, it should be like that. I think that will be important. And most people, I think we'll see a divergence of people that are curious and have that mindset, which will slow
Yes.
down to learn, and then people that just want to get it done and just go on to the next thing. And yeah, I think that'll be a big challenge.
So I was investigating, maybe working with a lawyer on some issue. Not this is separate from the coding stuff, and the lawyer was proposing something which to me sounded like maybe a little suspect, and it became even more suspect when the lawyer said, "It works, but I don't know how." It was kind of like just what you said. And you know what? When a lawyer or any professional that I'm relying upon for their opinion, particularly when I'm taking on the risk, says it works, but I don't know how, but it just works. So I mean, we can do it. It just,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Now, with vibe coding, what I've done, this is one of the things that I would suggest to other folks too, is just like I wasn't just going in and trying to get things to work willy-nilly. I've been talking with ChatGPT for understands Bubble pretty well.
Mhm.
And so we've had conversations back and forth from the beginning when I first started. And with Bubble, I never looked at any of the documentation. I never read the instructions because I'm a male. That's just what we do or don't do. And you just like to dive in to start figuring out. I mean, Bubble will like ask you a couple of questions. Well, what is it you're trying to do?
Mhm.
And they'll build you like the framework of something, and that's great. It's a great starting point. But it's like ice crystals falling around, forming around dust. It's not the snowstorm.
Mhm.
It's just a little element. But what I've found that having these conversations back and forth with Chat GPT is that, or I guess you could do it. Some people say that Grok's better for this. But what I found is that I've learned through this, because I have asked Chat some of the things you've said. Well, why did this work and why did this not work? And now
Yeah.
I'm at the point where I'm relying less on Chat for stuff, and I'm just naturally now figuring out the design of things. Because again, like I said, it can be really, really complicated. But even then, if people don't learn, if they just realize it just works, then they don't know if there's a security vulnerability in there, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And oh, the whole this whole yeah, it's I'm just there's so many ideas running through my mind on this about AI, and there'll be lots of security vulnerabilities because there'll be lots of stuff that's just vibe coded up that isn't designed for security. I think it will get better over time.
Mm.
And there's like two ideas. One is we'll have to bring in security experts to clean it all up. Another idea is the technology advances far enough that will have, it'll be able to correct itself. The future models will correct the errors of the previous models type idea. I think it'll probably be somewhere in the middle. I don't think AI is going to replace people because you still need that architecting and that like value, you know, uh, like the value proposition of what you're trying to achieve and how to build towards that. And AI is really good at the bricklaying part. Now, if AI gets good at the architecting part, then well, that will be a whole new frontier. But for now, at least, it's just eliminating the syntax, right? All of the laborious writing of code and making sure everything's syntactically correct.
Just my opinion on that is that I think AI might be able to get past the bricklaying to the architecture part
Mm,
fairly easily. What I don't see is the imagination. It's
hmm.
like I have the idea on what it is I'm trying to solve, and AI may be able to propose different solutions, but not really imagine, because everything that AI regurgitates is just that. There's not an original thought in AI. They can
Hmm.
cobble things together to make it look that way, but you
Yeah.
don't really have the foresight, the imagination. I don't know if we're ever going to get there, but it's going to make a security nightmare if that ever happens, I think.
Yeah, well, the whole, and then this gets into really deep philosophical questions too about what does it mean to be truly human, and is there such thing as truly, like a spark of true inspiration and true imagination, or is it all regurgitated? A really interesting video, check it
Mm.
out sometime, on YouTube, is called "Everything Is a Remix: The Matrix," and so they go through the movie The Matrix, which seems like a very novel, creative movie. It's one of my favorite movies, top three actually. It's The Matrix, it's Inception, and it's Interstellar. So I like sci-fi, right? And obviously I watch. I'm doing the Lord of the Rings, the extended for trilogies though it would be then Lord of the Rings and Star Wars. But anyhow, it goes to The Matrix and actually shows how a lot of the scenes in The Matrix are borrowed from these like Chinese kung fu movies. There's like a Chow Yun Fat scene where he like jumps up to shoot the other guy with a gun, and they both grab each other's guns and spin around and land, and then like their guns are empty. That's like straight, like The Matrix took it straight out of this Chow Yun Fat film from the 90s, the early 90s, right? Matrix came out in 99. It has the idea of Ghost in the Shell, which is an anime of how they jack into these machines to go into this other world. And so as you just start to see, actually, a lot of the elements in the Matrix, it's still very creative, and the way in which it's delivered from the perspective, like the bullet time, that technology, and just a lot of elements that were, I think, genuine, pure spark. What would you call it? Imagination. A lot of it though it was pulled from other ideas and themes and woven together and whatnot. And so I guess the question then is like, well, how much true spark imagination goes into things to make them like amazing or novel or worthwhile. And maybe it's less than we think. And a lot of it is pulling on the past.
I'm watching the Battlestar Galactica, the remake version from 2004. I never really watched the whole thing because I was an original Battlestar Galactica fan and was incredibly butthurt with what they did with reimagining the. So I never watched it all, and then that was my mistake. I'm watching it now. I just started season 2, and it's actually very good. And but one of their themes is everything that's happened before will happen again. Yeah, that keeps.
There's nothing new under
up.
the sun.
Yeah, there you go. See, but all of this, okay. It's kind of funny. It's like whenever I start these podcasts, I've got a list of potential discussion questions that just to make sure that we don't get like stuck on something. And here we are, like over 30 minutes in, and it's like this is the first podcast I have never had to go back to those discussion questions. we just went down this rabbit hole of vibe coding and all that. It was great conversation, but all that stuff is stressful in that I do think that the vibe coding is going to be a big issue come in the next year or two in security space. And I always emphasize to folks that we need to decompress from the stress. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves. It's just part of the industry, I think. And I always encourage folks to de-stress in a healthy manner. What's one of the things that you do, Mike, to de-stress from the stress?
Yeah. I like going to the gym. I do that about twice a week, maybe. And then other than that, I'm running. Running is probably my main thing that I do. I used to be really big into running pre-COVID, a little bit post-COVID, but I've done 25K, 50K trail races. I've done marathon. I did one marathon. This is my first actual race, though, was it was in the from Huanglin. It was in the Phoenix Mountains of what would that be? West part of Beijing. And it was a marathon that started at 9 p.m. and the cutoff time was 9 a.m. And I'm like, 12 hours. I'm in good. I could do a marathon in like 3 or 4 hours, Well, it's not, the trail races are not the same as road races. There's a lot of up and down. I actually finished like 8:55 a.m. I almost missed the cutoff. I told my wife, I'm going to this race. I got my little head torch on and I'm all ready to go with my pack and whatnot. I'm like, don't worry, I'll be back in time. She's like, are we going to church together tomorrow? I said, absolutely, sweetheart. I will be back. We'll do that. She got so worried. And I didn't have cell service to tell her because I just didn't understand that trail races are just categorically different from road races. It's not so much the distance. Yes, that's the challenge, but it's all the up and down and boulders and trees and roots and dirt and all that stuff.
And just the unevenness, of the surface there.
Yeah. And then the biggest race I tried was in 2017. I tried this race in Malaysia called TMBT, the most beautiful thing. It ended up being the most painful thing. I did not make 100K. I only made it 50 kilometers, about halfway. And then I DNF'd, which is runner speak for failed. It did not finish. But now I'm getting back into training and I want to shoot for that same race in 2027. So, I'll have at that point, I'll have had 10 years for this chip on my shoulder to just stay there. And I don't want to get it off. So I'm going to go try this. So I'm getting into 25K this year and a 50K this year. And then we'll see where things go. I'm just working through some health stuff to get back on the saddle. And then hopefully then to the stars. We'll see.
Well, other than increasing in the distance and shooting for 2027 for the 100K, what other plans you got coming up?
I just stepped into this new role. So just focusing there. I'm really interested in getting more into low level because a lot of it's SolaSec. A lot of what we do is actually on the hardware hacking side. It's medical devices, ATM, car, automobile, things like that. And so getting more, I don't have an electrical engineering background. So I actually do more of the, web app, API, network, pen tests, all the stuff these devices are connected to. But I think for this year, one thing I want to learn more about is more of the low level devices, like how to pull firmware, how to reverse engineer protocols, like straight on the chip itself, things like that. I think would be really interesting. More of the hardware, hands-on stuff.
Fascinating. Well, I love the conversation. We'll have to bring you back in 2027 after you've completed successfully the 100K, because I'm sure you will.
I hope so.
And teach us about it. And the theme of that podcast episode will be what I learned from completing or yeah, what I learned from completing 100K and how it applies to offensive security. How about that? Something like
It's a
that.
long journey. That yeah, sounds good.
Well, hey, Mike, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate it.
Good to be here. Thank you.
And everybody, stay secure.